Ooh, I don't like how. What do you mean? How is this better? Why did I have to redo it again? Is this good enough? Is it too bright? Maybe a little bit. Contrast, that's fine. Saturation. Nah, it's fine like this. White, oh, white balance, here it is. Here it is. There. Let's see if I'm live. YouTube should be live. I should be live. Oh, I'm live. I'm live. I'm live. I'm live. I'm live. I can see myself on YouTube. That was easy. Okay, so this is just something I like to do. Record myself, put myself on the internet so I can see myself in months, years. There's still some tasks I need to do today because there are some habits I want to do every day. Oh, I want to invert this. Can I invert it? Oh, it was new scene. That's why it wasn't set up right. I see. Is it gonna flip horizontal, right? Yes, here I am. Did it change on YouTube also? Horizontal, right? Oh, yes. It did. Okay, so funny or not funny? Great. Yes. Sorry if I keep looking at like myself on the screen. Maybe if yeah, it's this should be more close to the center. It is. Well, I was talking about habits. So yeah, I have 9 habits I want to do daily because I have like 3 like topics I want to improve on. 3 major topics in my life, which are currently building. This is kind of spontaneous, so I didn't really get this through before I went live. I just started going, basically. It was building discipline. The first one is building discipline. The second one is digital marketing. And the third one, what is the third one? I forgot, but it has to do with cooking and stuff. Why don't I know? Why? How do I forget? I'm every day I'm doing this. It's exercise. Cook, exercise. It's writing. I feel like I have building discipline has like 6 habits hatched onto it, I feel like. But yeah, I don't know where those other ones came from because the first 2 are like waking up at 6, which I am not doing at the moment. I started doing that like in the beginning, but I get too tired along the week, so I might have to change that one. The second one is taking cold shower every day, which I have done since like the beginning. So that's like 39 days in. Yeah. Nonetheless, I've got to be somewhere in an hour. I'm going to meet a friend. His name is Pomas. But before I go there, I want to just try this thing out because I just got this new webcam, and I had this idea of streaming or filming myself, building my own brand and stuff. So I wanted to also try this out. Wow, you get what I'm saying, right? But okay, so one thing I do daily is reading, and I haven't read today. So I'm currently reading The Courage to Be Disliked, which really helped me so far. I think it has had an impact already. I'm only 132 pages in, and I'm currently reading about like life tasks, and like how each person's life task is individual, and we shouldn't intervene in other one's life task, which is liberating, because you don't have to worry about others and stop caring about others people's opinions, which honestly I struggled with growing up, and this is a form of me putting it into practice, because I think I wouldn't have done this a couple of years ago. I definitely wouldn't have and I'm still not sharing this on my social media on Insta. Like, I'm just here, and if someone joins, but I currently have 0 viewers. It'll probably stay this way, but still there is a possibility someone sees this. We'll start. I'm also not a native English speaker, as you may know, and I am trying to get better at speaking English, especially on my pronunciation and speech in general. As you can see, I have a lot of fun with myself, which I'm happy about, because not everyone has this fun, and that I have learned. Sorry, I'm rambling, but that I have learned from many people. Basically, I was searching for it, but I have to specifically mention Xandra from TikTok. You guys should watch her out. She's the queen of like self-love for me. Okay, let's start. Cut the Gordian knot. I'm sure that if one could understand the separation of tasks and put it into practice, one's interpersonal relationship would at once become free. But I still can't accept it. Go on, I'm listening. I think that, in theory, the separation of tasks is entirely right. What other people think of me, or what sort of judgment they pass on me, is the task of other people, and is not something I can do anything about. And I should just do what I have to do in my life without lying. I'd have no problem if you said, this is a life truth. That's how right I think it is. But consider this. From an ethical or moral point of view, could it be said to be the right thing to do? That is to say, a way of living that draws boundaries between oneself and others? Because wouldn't you be brushing other people away and saying that's intervention whenever they were worried about you and ask how you're doing? It seems to me that this is something that treats on the goodwill of others. Have you heard of the man known as Alexander the Great? Alexander the Great? Yes, I learned about him in world history. He was a Macedonian king who lived in the 4th century before Christ. When he was advancing on the Persian kingdom of Lydia, he learned of a chariot enshrined in the Acropolis. The chariot had been secured tightly to a pillar in the temple by Gordias, the former king, and there was a local legend that said, "He who unravels this knot shall be master of Asia." It was a tightly wound knot that many men of skill had been certain they could unbind, but no one had succeeded. Now, what do you think Alexander the Great did when he stood before the knot? Well, didn't he unravel the legendary knot with ease and go on to become the ruler of Asia? No, that's not how it happened. As soon as Alexander the Great saw how tight the knot was, he pulled out his sword and sliced it in half with one stroke. Wow! Then it is said that he declared, "Destiny is not something brought about by legend, but by clearing away with one's own sword." He had no use for the power of legend, and would forge his destiny with his sword. As you know, he then proceeded to become the great conqueror of all territories of what is now the Middle East and Western Asia. This is the famous anecdote known as the Gordian knot. And so, such intricate knots, the bonds in our interpersonal relationships, are not to be unraveled by conventional methods, but must be severed by some completely new approach. Whenever I explain the separation of tasks, I always remember the Gordian knot. Well, I don't mean to contradict you, but not everyone can become Alexander the Great. Ooh, it's very, very bright. Let me close this so y'all can see my face a bit better, so I can read a bit more easily. Well, I don't mean to contradict you, but not everyone can become Alexander the Great. Isn't it precisely because there was no one else who could have cut the knot that the anecdote portraying it as a heroic deed is still conveyed to this day? It's exactly the same with the separation of tasks. Even though one knows one can just cut through something with one sword, one might find it rather difficult, because when one presses forward with the separation of tasks, in the end one will have to cut ties with people. One will drive people into isolation. The separation of tasks you speak of completely ignores human emotion. How could one possibly build good interpersonal relationships with that? One can build them. The separation of tasks is not the final objective for interpersonal relationships. Rather, it is the gateway. The gateway? For instance, when reading a book, if one brings one's face too close to it, one cannot see anything. In the same way, forming good interpersonal relationships require a certain degree of distance. When the distance gets too small and people become stuck together, it becomes impossible to even speak to each other. But the distance must not be too great either. Parents who scold their children too much become mentally very distant. When this happens, the child can no longer even consult the parents, and the parents can no longer give the proper assistance. One should be ready to lend a hand when needed, but not encroach on the person's territory. I know what to do. So here it is. The Is distance necessary even in the kind of relationship that parents and children have? Of course. Earlier you said that the separation of tasks is something that treats on the other people's goodwill. That is a notion that is tied to reward. It's the idea that when another person does something for you, you have to do something in return, even if that person does not want anything. Rather than responding to the goodwill, it is just being tied to reward. No matter what sort of appeal the other person might make, you are the only one who decides what you should do. Reward is at the root of what I am calling ties. Yes, when reward is at the base of an interpersonal relationship, there's a feeling that wells up in one that says, I gave this much, so you should give me that much back. This is a notion that is quite different from separation of tasks, of course. We must not seek reward, and we must not be tied to it. However, there are certainly situations in which it would be easier to intervene in the tasks of another person without doing any separation of tasks. For instance, in a child-raising situation, when a child is having a hard time tying his shoes. For the busy mother, it is certainly faster to tie them than to wait for him to do it himself. But that is an intervention, and it is taking the child's task away from him. And as a result of repeating that intervention, the child will cease to learn anything and will lose the courage to face his life tasks. As Adler says, children who have not been taught to confront challenges will try to avoid all challenges. But that is such a dry way of thinking. When Alexander the Great cut the Gordian knot, there were probably those who felt the same way, that the unraveling of the knot by hand had meaning, and that it was a mistake to cut it with a sword, that Alexander had misunderstood the meaning of the oracle's words. In Adlerian psychology, there are aspects that are anti-ethical to normal societal thinking. It denies ideology, denies trauma, and adopts teleology. It treats people's problems as interpersonal relationship problems, and the not seeking of recognition and the separation of tasks too are probably antithetical to normal social thinking. It's impossible, I can't do it. Why? The youth was devastated by the separation of tasks that the philosopher had begun describing. When one thought of all one's problems as being in one's interpersonal relationships, the separation of tasks was effective. Just by having this viewpoint, the world would become quite simple. But there was no flesh and blood in it. It gave off no sense of one's warmth as a person. Could anyone accept such a philosophy? The youth rose from his chair and pleaded loudly. Desire for recognition makes you unfree. Desire for recognition makes you unfree. Very. Okay. Look, I have been dissatisfied for ages. The adults of the world tell the young people, do something you like to do. And they do it with smiles on their faces as if they might actually be understanding people, as if they were on the side of the young. But it's a lip service that only comes out because those young people are complete strangers to them, and their relationship is one that is completely without any kind of responsibility. Then parents and teachers tell us, get into that school or look for a stable occupation, and this concrete and uninteresting instruction is not merely an intervention. It's actually that they are trying to fulfill their responsibilities. It's precisely because we are close to connected to them and they are seriously concerned about our future that they can't say irresponsible things like do something you like. I'm sure you'd put on I'm sure you'd put on that understanding face too and say to me, please do something you like, but I won't believe such a comment from another person. It's an extremely irresponsible comment, as if one were just brushing a caterpillar on one's shoulder. And if the world crushed that caterpillar, you would say, it's not my task, and walk away nonchalantly. What separation of tasks, you monster! Oh goodness, you're getting all bent out of shape. So, what you are saying, in other words, is that you want someone to intervene to some extent, that you want another person to decide your path? Sure, maybe I do. It's like this. It's not so difficult to judge what other aspects of one or what kind of role is being demanded of one. Living as one likes, on the other hand, is extremely difficult. What does one want? What does one want to become, and what kind of life does one want to lead? One doesn't always get such a concrete idea of things. It would be a grave mistake to think that everyone has clear-cut dreams and objectives. Don't you know that? Maybe it's easier to live in such a way as to satisfy other people's expectations, because one is entrusting one's own life to them. For example, one runs along the track that one's parents have laid out. Even if there are a lot of things one might object to, one will not lose one's way as long as one stays on those rails. But if one is deciding one's path oneself, it's only natural that one will get lost at times. One comes up against the wall of how one should live. That is what I am looking for recognition from others for. You were talking about God earlier, and if we were still living in an era when God was something people believed in, I suppose that God is watching might serve as criterion for self-discipline. If one were recognized by God, maybe one didn't need recognition from others, but that era ended a long time ago. And in that case, one has no choice but to discipline oneself on the basis that other people are watching, to aspire to be recognized by others and live an honest life. Other people's eyes are my guide. Does one choose recognition from others, or does one choose a path of freedom without recognition? It's an important question. Let's think about it together. To live one's life trying to gauge, to live one's life trying to gauge other people's feelings and being worried about how they look at you. To live in such a way that others' wishes are granted. There may indeed be signposts to guide you this way, but it is a very unfree way to live. Now, why are you choosing such an unfree way to live? You are using the term desire for recognition, but what you are really saying is that you don't want to be disliked by anyone. Who does? There's no one anywhere would go so far as to actually want it to be disliked. Exactly. It is true that there is no person who wishes to be disliked. But look at it this way. What should one do to not be disliked by anyone? There is only one answer. It is to constantly gauge other people's feelings, while swearing loyalty to all of them. If there are 10 people, one must swear loyalty to all 10. When one does that, for the time being, one will have succeeded in not being disliked by anyone. But at this point, there is a great contradiction looming. One swears loyalty to all 10 people out of the single-minded desire to not be disliked. This is like a politician who has fallen into populism and begun to make impossible promises and accept responsibilities that are beyond him. Naturally, his lies will come to light before long. He will lose people's distrust and turn his own life into one of greater suffering. And of course, the stress of continual lying has all kinds of consequences. Please grasp this point. If one is living in such a way as to satisfy other people's expectations, and one is entrusting one's own life to others, that is a way of living in which one is lying to oneself, and continuing that lying to include the people around one. So one should be egocentric and live however one pleases. Separating one's tasks is not an egocentric thing. Intervening in other people's tasks is essentially an egocentric way of thinking, however. Parents force their children to study. They meddle in their life and marriage choices. That is nothing other than an egocentric way of thinking. So the child can just ignore his parents' intentions and live however he pleases. There is no reason of any sort that one should live one's life as one pleases. There is no reason of any sort that one should not live one's life as one pleases. Haha. Not only are you a nihilist, you are an anarchist and an hedonist to boot. I am past being astonished, and now I'm going to start laughing at any moment. An adult who has chosen an unfree way to live, on seeing a young person living freely here and now in the moment, criticizes the youth as being hedonistic. Of course, this is a life lie. It comes out so that the adult can accept his own unfree life. An adult who has chosen real freedom himself will not make such comments and will instead cheer on the will to be free. Alright, so what you are maintaining is that freedom is the issue. Let's get to the main point. You've been using the word freedom a lot, but what does freedom mean to you anyway? How can we be free? Do I go on? Do I stop? It's 5:20. Oh, I go on. It's the chapter is almost done. So, what real freedom is? Earlier, you acknowledged that you do not want to be disliked by anyone, and said there's no one anywhere who'd go so far as to actually want to be disliked. Right. Well, I'm the same way. I have no desire to be disliked by other people. I would say that no one would go so far as to actually want to be disliked is a sharp insight. It's a universal desire. Even so, regardless of our efforts, there are people who dislike me and people who dislike you. This too is a fact. When you are disliked or feel that you are being disliked by someone, what state of mind does it put you in? Very distressed, to put it simply. I wonder why I've come to be disliked and what I did or said that might have been offensive. I think I should have interacted with the person in a different way, and I just brood over it and am ridden with guilt. Not wanting to be disliked by other people, the human beings, this is an entirely natural desire and an impulse. Kant, the giant of modern philosophy, called this desire inclination. Inclination, yes. It is one's instinctive desires, one's impulsive desires. Now, if one were to say that living like a stone tumbling downhill and allowing such inclinations or desires or impulses to take one wherever they will is freedom, one would be incorrect. To live in such a way is only to be a slave to one's desires and impulses. Real freedom is an attitude akin to pushing up one's stumbling self from below. Pushing oneself up from below. A stone is powerless. Once it has begun to roll downhill, It will continue to roll until released from the natural laws of gravity and inertia. But we are not stones. We are human beings who are capable of resisting inclination. We can stop our tumbling selves and climb uphill. We can stop our tumbling selves and climb uphill. The desire for recognition is probably a natural desire. So, are you going to keep rolling downhill in order to receive recognition from others? Are you going to wear yourself down like a rolling stone until everything is smoothed away? When all that is left is a little round ball, would that be the real I? It cannot be. Are you saying that resisting one's instincts and impulses is freedom? As I have stated repeatedly, in Adlerian psychology, we think that all problems are interpersonal relationship problems. In other words, we seek release from interpersonal relationships. We seek to be free from interpersonal relationships. However, it is absolutely impossible to live alone in the universe. In light of what we have discussed until now, the conclusion we reach regarding what freedom is should be clear. What is it? In short, that freedom is being disliked by other people. Huh? What was that? It's that you are disliked by someone. It is proof that you are exercising your freedom and living in freedom. And a sign that you are living in accordance with your own principles. Damn. But it is certainly distressful to be disliked. If possible, one would like to live without being disliked by anyone. One wants to satisfy one's desires for recognition. But conducting oneself in such a way as to not be disliked by anyone is an extremely unfree way of living, and is also impossible. There is a cost incurred when one wants to exercise one's freedom, and the cost of freedom in interpersonal relationships is that one is disliked by other people. No, that's totally wrong. There is no way that could be called freedom. That's a diabolical way of thinking to coax on into evil doing. You've probably been thinking of freedom as a release from organizations, that breaking away from your home or school, your company or your nation is freedom. However, if you were to break away from your organization, for instance, you would not be able to gain real freedom. Unless one is unconcerned by other people's judgments, has no fear of being disliked by other people, and pays the cost that one might never be recognized, one will never be able to follow through in one's own way of living. That is to say, one will not be able to be free. Be disliked by other people, is that what you are saying? What I am saying is, don't be afraid of being disliked. But I am not telling you to go so far as to live in such a way that you will be disliked. And I am not saying engage in wrongdoing. Please do not misunderstand that. No, then let's change the question. Can people actually endure the weight of freedom? Are people that strong to not care even if one is disliked by one's own parents? Can one become so self-righteously defiant? One neither prepares to be self-righteous nor becomes defiant. One just separates tasks. There may be a person who does not think well of you, but that is not your task. And again, thinking things like, he should like me, or I have done all this, so it's strange that he doesn't like me, is the reward-oriented way of thinking of having intervened in other people's tasks. One moves forward without fearing the possibility of being disliked. One does not live as if one were rolling downhill, but instead climbs the slope that lies ahead. That is freedom for a human being. Suppose that I had two choices in front of me, a life in which all people like me, and a life in which there are people who dislike me, and I was told to choose one. I would choose the latter without a second thought. Before being concerned with what others think of me, I want to follow through with my own being. That is to say, I want to live in freedom. Are you free now? Yes, I am free. You do not want to be disliked, but you don't mind if you are? Yes, that's right. Not wanting to be disliked is probably my task. But whether or not so and so dislikes me is the other person's task. If there is a person who doesn't think well of me, I cannot intervene in that. To borrow from the proverb I mentioned earlier, naturally one would make the effort to lead a horse to water. But whether he drinks or not is not that person's task. That's some conclusion. The courage to be happy also includes the courage to be disliked. When you have gained that courage, your interpersonal relationships will all at once change into things of lightness. Damn. Do I keep on? Yes. You hold the cards. You hold the cards to interpersonal relationships. Well, I never would have imagined I'd visit a philosopher's place to hear about being disliked. I am well aware that this is not an easy thing to swallow. It will probably take some time to chew over and digest. If we go any farther with this today, I think you won't be able to keep it in your head. So I would like to talk to you about one more thing, a personal matter that relates to the separation of tasks, and then finish up for today. Alright. This one too is about relationships with parents. My relationship with my father had always been a rocky one, even when I was a child. My mother died when I was in my 20s, without us ever engaging in anything like real conversation together. And after that, my relationship with my father became increasingly strained. That is, until I encountered Adlerian psychology and grasped Adler's ideas. Why did you have a bad relationship with your father? What I have in my memory is an image from a time when he hit me. I have no recollection of what I might have done to bring it on. I only remember hiding under a desk in an attempt to escape him, when he dragged me out and hit me hard, and not just once, but many times. That fear became trauma. I think that until I encountered Adlerian psychology, I understood it in that kind of way, because my father was a moody, taciturn person. But to think to myself, he hit me that time, and that is why our relationship went bad, is a Freudian ideological way of thinking. The Adlerian teleology position completely reverses the cause and effect interpretation. That is to say, I brought out the memory of being hit because I don't want my relationship with my father to get better. So first you had the goal of not wanting your relationship with your father to get better and not wanting to repair things between you. That's right. For me, it was more convenient to not repair my relationship with my father. I could use having a father like that as an excuse for my own life, for why my own life wasn't going well. That for me was a virtue, and there was also the aspect of taking revenge on a feudal father. That is exactly why I wanted to ask about what I wanted to ask about. Even if the cause and effect were reversed, that is to say, in your case, you were able to analyze yourself and say, it isn't because he hit me that I have a bad relationship with my father, but that I brought out the memory of being hit because I don't want my relationship with my father to get better. Even then, how does it actually change things? It doesn't change the fact that you were hit in childhood, right? One can think from the viewpoint that it is an interpersonal relationship card. As long as I use ideology to think it is because he hit me that I have a bad relationship with my father, it would be a matter that was impossible for me to do anything about. But if I can think I brought out the memory of being hit because I don't want my relationship with my father to get better, then I will be holding the card to repair relations. Because if I can just change the goal, that fixes everything. Does that really fix things? Of course. I wonder if you really feel so from the bottom of your heart. I can understand in theory, but the feelings just doesn't sit right with me. Then it's the separation of tasks. It's true that my father and I had a complicated relationship. He was a stubborn person, and I could never imagine his feelings being able to change easily. Moreover, there was a strong possibility that he had even forgotten ever raising his hands against me. However, at the time of making my resolution to repair relations, it did not matter to me what sort of lifestyle my father had or what he thought of me or the kind of attitude he might adopt in response to my approach. Such things didn't matter at all. Even if there were no intention to repair relations on his side, I would not mind in the least. The issue was whether or not I would resolve to do it, and I was always holding the interpersonal relationship cards. You were always holding the interpersonal relationship cards? Yes. Many people think that the interpersonal relationship cards are held by the other person. That is why they wonder, how does that person feel about me, and end up living in such a way as to satisfy the wishes of other people. But if they can grasp the separation of tasks, they will notice that they are holding all the cards. This is a new way of thinking. So due to your changing, did your father change too? I did not change in order to change my father. That is an erroneous notion of trying to manipulate another person. Even if I change, it is only I who changes. I do not know what will happen to the other person as a result, and that is not an aspect I can take part in. This too is the separation of tasks. Of course, there are times when, in tandem with my change, not due to my change, the other person changes too. In many cases, the person will have no choice but to change. But that is not the goal, and it is certainly possible that the other person will not change. In any case, changing one's own speech and conduct as a way of manipulating other people is clearly a mistaken way of thinking. One must not manipulate other people, and manipulating cannot be done. When we speak of interpersonal relationships, it always seems to be two-person relationships and a relationship to a large group that come to mind. But first, it is oneself. When one is tied to the desire for recognition, the interpersonal relationship cards will always stay in the hands of other people. Does one entrust the cards of life to another person or hold onto them oneself? Please take your time and sort through these ideas again in your own home about the separation of tasks and about freedom. I will be waiting for you here next time. Alright, I will give it some thought on my own. Well then, please, there's just one more thing I want to ask you. What is it? In the end, were you able to repair your relationship with your father? Yes, of course, I think so. My father fell ill, and in the last few years of his life, it was necessary for me and my family to take care of him. Then, One day, when I was taking care of him as usual, my father said, "Thank you." I had not known my father possessed such a word in his vocabulary, and I was astonished and felt grateful for all the days that had passed. Through the long years of my caregiving life, I had tried to do whatever I could, that is to say, I had done my best to lead my father to water. And in the end, he drank. I think he did. Well, thank you very much. I will come again the next time. I will come again at the same time. I had a good time. Thank you too. And that was the end of the third night. How do you like it so far, guys? Nah? Whoa, we're 45 minutes in. That's a long time with 0 viewers. It's to be expected. Man. The courage to be disliked, because it means that you're on your own path. It means because it's just impossible to be liked by everyone because of our different stances, different opinions, and to be disliked is proof. You've taken a stance. Is proof you're not hold by others people's thoughts or wants or needs or yes, and that's why you need the courage to be disliked, and courage is a very, very, very important thing, word, mental state, something I want to talk about, share with the world. But that's for another time. I can talk about it right now, briefly. Well, there is this screen capture. Ooh. Wait, does it find this one? Do I need to try again? Hello, yes, this one. Hello. Okay. Here I am again. This is how the streamers do it. Man, look at me. Look at me. Look at me. Hello. Alright, let me see if it's translated. Here it is. Damn, technology, man. Life's easy. Life's great, man. Okay, so here with hello, I'm gonna look up where I got the levels of consciousness. Yes, I've looked this up before. It's this one. it's this one. It's this one. So what do you guys see? Yeah, okay. So let me okay, y'all do okay. Sorry, I'm still new to this. No, I don't want to sign with Quora. But here you see the conscious level and what we experience, and what I believe is that all these conscious levels, all these words, all these states, like shame and pride and joy, and you see, we are in control of this conscious level state, right? It's totally up to us, and it's in it's, I think it's a bit aligned in what in what this book also says, like how you have to take control of how you perceive things, right? Like not blame trauma. How you choose it's difficult for me to find the right words now, because it's time for me to go actually, right? But yeah, so think of the conscious level, something you how do you say this, something you choose, right? You consciously can choose, right? It also can happen like you're not that conscious, like you just, something happens and you just don't think by yourself, and then you do something wrong or something someone doesn't like, and you get shamed for it. You get shamed, and then you take a mental state of shame. But you can also choose not to be in that mental state. Like I could be shamed for the wrong thing. It's just this way of thinking. Like it's something extreme, like some for example, drinking water at a restaurant, right, where you usually drink like soda or any other type of drink, and I could be shamed for, man, why are you drinking for water? You should be drinking alcohol, or you should drink this soda. I mean, you're paying for water. Come on, man. That's not like really shame, but it's something, I just thought of. And then you can, or you could maybe feel guilt. You feel guilt for not for buying water, which could be free, right? But it's all up to you how you're gonna take that situation mentally on a conscious level. You could say, I'm not gonna take any guilt for this. I have to be just take another one, a power, a courage. I'm gonna have the courage to not think what you say, but just to buy water and drink my water, and yeah, because I want to drink water, because I think it's way more healthy. Now you're more in the reasons, on the reason side, right? But it starts at courage, from where happiness and productivity begins, as you can see right up there. So and if you're this if you're in these ones, all this inaction stuff, like you're basically in a non-desired mental state, conscious state, and that's all up to you. That's all I want to say. That's all the time I have today. That's it. I'm gonna speak about this another time for sure. And this is